I vividly remember when, during Super Bowl 30, one of the ads, which, let's face it, that's why I was watching the Super Bowl, I'm not a sports ball guy, showed the White House being blown up by a flying saucer. Viral marketing wasn't really a thing yet, but this simple teaser, which reportedly cost a whopping $1.3 million to air, got the hype going in a way never seen before. The movie was over half a year away, but we were all hooked. Who doesn't want to see the White House blow up? In a movie, YouTube. In a movie. Don't freak out on me. Today we're going to talk about Independence Day. The movie, not the holiday. And while I fully intend to give you a basic rundown of the production history and the cast and the release and all that, due to how big this movie was, and arguably still is, I'm going to spend more time on my own opinion. That's because Independence Day is a good cipher for understanding my own relationship to film, and I'm going to discuss how I went from feeling one way about the movie to feeling an entirely different way. I'll talk about how I relate this to my parents and my love of more highbrow, pretentious films. But above all else, I want to highlight how much better life can be if you just let yourself enjoy things. It's been 30 years, so now we once again celebrate our Independence Day.
Welcome to Earth.
The human race awakens one morning to discover that it is no longer alone in the universe. Enormous crafts have bridged the gulf of space, but they do not come in peace. Seeing us as mere annoyances in the way of satiating their ravenous hunger for resources, the aliens aboard these vessels take aim at every major city in the world, ruthlessly launching a campaign of destruction. A handful of people from across the American continent, including the US President, an MIT scientist, an alcoholic crop duster, and a hotshot Marine pilot, has come together in one last desperate ploy to save mankind. But with time moving all too quickly towards extinction, the odds are not in their favor.
According to writer-director Roland Emmerich, he came up with the idea of a massive War of the Worlds style invasion film while doing press with his production partner Dean Devlin for their breakout hit Stargate. A reporter asked him if he believed in the existence of real-life aliens, and when Emmerich said no, the reporter asked, why then make a movie about them? Emmerich, off the top of his head, told the reporter to imagine giant, miles-wide flying saucers hovering over every major city in the world. And then he turned to Devlin and announced he had a concept for their next film. Over the course of just 1 month, the pair got to work writing a script. They decided to borrow not only from classic science fiction, but also the disaster movies of the 1970s, and Devlin wanted to highlight the boldness of the aliens, thinking it odd that in most invasion stories, the aliens stay hidden from the mass public. As with Stargate, Devlin would produce the new film and Emmerich would direct. Almost immediately upon the script's completion, the project was approved by 20th Century Fox, who were promised, quote, War of the Worlds meets Pulp Fiction, unquote. Emmerich and Devlin had sent the script out on a Thursday, signed the contracts with Fox on Friday, and then, the following Monday, they officially began pre-production. With over 400 speaking roles, Independence Day has an ensemble cast, but the closest thing to a lead is the character of Captain Stephen Hiller. Emmerich and Devlin specifically wrote the role for an African-American actor, but the studio pushed back and offered the job to Ethan Hawke. Hawke turned it down though, and eventually Emmerich and Devlin were able to get their original choice, Will Smith. Smith was mostly known as the Fresh Prince back then, following his successful career with DJ Jazzy Jeff and his lead role in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. However, he was a rising star in movies following Bad Boys and 6 Degrees of Separation. By the way, 6 Degrees of Separation also stars Donald Sutherland, who was in Animal House with Kevin Bacon.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
For his character's girlfriend Jasmine, the role almost went to Smith's real future wife Jada Pinkett, who turned it down. Instead, they cast Vivica Fox, known at the time for soap operas like Days of Our Lives and for guest roles on popular television shows, including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which also featured Ross Bagley in the regular role of Nikki.
Mommy and Daddy won't let me watch Bad Boys.
Bad Boys, huh? What you gonna do?
In Independence Day, Bagley plays Jasmine's son Dylan. The second largest role in the film is the President of the United States, Thomas Widmore. Originally written to be less heroic and more Richard Nixon-y, Devlin wanted to cast his high school friend Kevin Spacey, but the studio refused, arguing that Spacey wasn't leading man material. After rewriting the character, they then cast Lone Star himself, Bill Pullman, who read Bob Woodward's The Commanders and studied Robert Kennedy's speech following the assassination of Martin Luther King in preparation for the role. The First Lady was always written for Mary McDonnell, who apparently loved the script, but the role of the President's communications director, Constance, originally went to Universal Soldiers Ally Walker. She had to drop out at the last minute and was replaced by Margaret Collin. Constance's separated husband, David Levinson, went to Jeff Goldblum, riding so high off of Jurassic Park that Emmerich and Devlin decided to loop in one of his lines from that movie into theirs.
Uh-oh, they're closing up on us. Is that closing?
Shut up, shut up, shut up!
Go faster. Must go faster. Must go faster. Go, 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 go!
Levinson's father is played by Judd Hirsch. Hirsch was around 60 years old at the time, but he looked so young for his age that he had to be given extensive old age makeup, which the actor reportedly hated. However, Hirsch and Goldblum had instant chemistry on set and were encouraged to do a lot of improvisation. Along with Will Smith, who also improv'd a lot of his lines, some of their characters' best moments in the final film were not in the script. Here are some of my favorite examples.
Let's just get there as quickly as
What's
possible.
the rush, huh? You think we'll get to Washington and won't be there? Baseball players, singers. And now me.
Imagine that. Look, a poor immigrant like me. It's a dream.
Shh, David, please.
And what the hell is that smell?
We're loose. Can you get us out of here in 30 seconds?
I ain't heard no fat lady.
Forget the fat lady. You're obsessed with the fat lady.
Meanwhile, the drunken Russell Case is played by Randy Quaid, which honestly is perfect casting, considering... well, never mind, I'll be nice. In the first cut of the film, Quaid's character is rejected as a potential fighter pilot in the climactic battle, but he attaches a stolen missile to his crop duster and tries to use that to save the day. Despite test screenings seemingly approving of this plot point, they decided to change it with a few reshoots, adding in references to Case being a former pilot in Vietnam, and a scene where he is accepted for the fight despite his eccentricities. Other notable actors include Harry Connick Jr. as Jimmy, a role that originally went to Matthew Perry before he had to drop out, Matthew Perry's dad, John Perry, as this random Secret Service agent, the always lovable Brent Spiner as Dr. Oaken, a character based on Stargate's visual effects supervisor Jeffrey Oaken, Robert Loggia, who initially thought the movie was a spoof, as General Gray, the hero of Canton himself, Adam Baldwin, as Major Mitchell, Harvey Fierstein as Marty, whose on-screen kiss with Jeff Goldblum might have caused an important scene to be removed entirely, James Duvall, who Emmerich and Devlin purportedly found working as a waiter in the most cliché actor story ever as Miguel, Ferris Bueller's dad, Lyman Ward, as this background character, Rance Howard as the minister, Leland Orser as this scientist, the visual effects supervisor on this movie, Volker Engel, as this unfortunate guy who is much too dedicated to his office job, and about 24 other actors and actresses you'd probably recognize. I have to move on though, because the cast could make for a 30-minute video all its own. But before we go any further, do you like sci-fi horror? Do you like books? Well, have I got the book for you. It's called The Caves of Solace, and it'll be available on August 4th, 2026 through Amazon. It's the story of people diving deep into the depths of an alien planet to solve a centuries-old mystery involving mass disappearances, ghosts, strange scientific anomalies, and a heavy dose of Lovecraftian madness. Through my links in the description, you can pre-order your digital copy now, you can order your physical copy on August 4th, or you can join my Patreon at the $8 level to secure your own signed copy. Again, that is The Caves of Solace, available August 4th. It's a hell of a journey. Filming on Independence Day started in late July 1995, on locations like New York City and New Jersey, Washington, D.C., the Very Large Array in New Mexico, the roof of the U.S. Bank Tower and other areas of Los Angeles, the Wendover Airport and Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, the Grand Canyon, and an Arizona RV park where a bunch of snowbirds got to be extras in a Hollywood movie, though I question why so many snowbirds were in the middle of the Arizona desert in the summertime. Though many sets were built for the film, including this partial diner they constructed in the middle of the Utah desert, the filmmakers saved a lot of money borrowing pre-built sets from other movies, including the submarine set from Crimson Tide, the interior White House sets from The American President, which would later also feature in Mars Attacks, and the interior of a bomber from Broken Arrow. They also did a lot of filming, including most of the models and miniature work, in a hangar at Hughes Aircraft in Culver City, where the Spruce Goose had been built and where Emmerich and Devlin had previously filmed some scenes for Stargate. There were more models and miniatures built for Independence Day than for any other American film, a record that the film probably still holds in the age of CGI shortcuts. Not only were multiple cities and landmarks recreated to be destroyed, but dozens of alien ships were built of various shapes and sizes, including one full-sized alien fighter craft. There are also plenty of motion-tracked shots of models where you wouldn't expect them, like this shot of a model White House. This movie came out at the height of the early computer graphics boom, and though it does use plenty of CGI, Emmerich and Devlin wanted to keep things practical whenever and wherever possible, both because they thought practical looked better and because it saved a lot of money in those days. And for the most part, that's why the extensive effects hold up to this day, albeit with some janky digital compositing and a few muddy textures here and there. Some of the hardest models to pull off properly were the aliens themselves. Unable to choose between two different designs, Emmerich and Devlin decided to combine the two by reworking the script, with the first design being a biomechanical suit worn by the second design, the more conventional-looking big-eyed gray dudes. Both designs were built with the philosophy that they shouldn't look like a man in a suit, so whenever you see an alien in the film, it's either a puppet or a model. The filming of ID4 was also responsible for a few UFO sightings over Orange County, California. When they attached the lighting rig to a Sikorsky Skycrane helicopter for the Welcome Wagon sequence, it was mistaken by an unwitting citizenry for a flying saucer trying to communicate with them. The filmmakers also tried to get the support of the United States military, which often helps in a lot of productions, several of which we've covered on this channel. Unfortunately, they came to an impasse when the military representatives insisted on removing any and all references to Area 51 in the script, which Emmerich and Devlin refused to do. So, the military pulled out of the movie, and the filmmakers had to make do on their own. Another argument during filming was when, due to complicated copyright issues that I tried way too hard to understand, only to come away more confused than when I started, the studio refused to call the movie by Emmerich and Devlin's chosen title, Independence Day. Instead, they floated a bunch of other names, most prominently Doomsday, but Emmerich and Devlin couldn't let it go, so they added a final line to the now iconic president's speech at the climax of the movie.
Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
and then they compromised by officially titling the film ID4: Independence Day, which apparently was enough to satisfy copyright. Several scenes had to be cut for time, including a couple of scenes that flesh out the radio signal communications the aliens are using, and how Jeff Goldblum's character is ultimately able to upload a computer virus into the mothership with his Macintosh PowerBook. I'm not saying these scenes explain away all the inherent problems of that plot point, but they do help with the suspension of disbelief. There's also a lot of stuff with the Case family that gives you a better understanding of their dynamic, but honestly, I could give or take those scenes. That said, you can obviously see all of this deleted stuff in the extended director's cut of the film, which is the version I recommend to the 5 of you who still haven't seen this movie. ID4: Independence Day released on July 3rd, 1996. To say it was a success is underselling just how big this movie was. Despite lukewarm reviews that thought it was too hokey for its own good, ID4 went on to become the second highest grossing film to date, with a worldwide box office haul of $817 million in its initial release. For the record, the #1 movie at the time was Jurassic Park. It was a good time to be Jeff Goldblum, I guess. It was also a good time to be Will Smith, for whom the movie would be the launching point for a meteoric rise to superstardom that only came crashing down relatively recently. Or should I say, slapping down. It also did wonders for Emmerich and Devlin, who would go on to direct the giant iguana version of Godzilla, which is subtly foreshadowed in ID4 by Dylan playing with King Ghidorah. Naturally, all of this means Independence Day had a huge cultural footprint, with toys, video games, and a slew of tie-in novels all based on the movie. Nevertheless, it didn't lead to as much franchise saturation as it would nowadays. The sequel, Independence Day Resurgence, for example, didn't come out until 2016, and it underperformed. And as far as I can tell, there have never been any television shows or animated versions set in its universe. So that, at long last, brings me to my own opinion about this movie. But before I discuss that, let me talk about my parents. When it comes to arts and entertainment, while I wouldn't call him a snob about anything but music, my father had more refined tastes than my mother, let's say, while my mother always advocates for the entertainment side of arts and entertainment, arguing that if something entertains you, that's all that really matters. By 1996, at the age of just 17, I was well on my way to becoming an insufferable film snob. I had discovered the likes of Stanley Kubrick, Andrei Tarkovsky, and Akira Kurosawa, and I was starting to get sick of the formulaic Hollywood nonsense my mother was always watching. Movies like Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, and The Net, the latter of which I recently re-evaluated on this channel. So I'll be honest, when I first saw Independence Day, I really, truly, honestly hated it. I saw it as a pale imitation of much better movies, a big-budget spectacle with no teeth in which the stupid dog lives in one of the most unrealistic and over-the-top sequences of the whole thing. A part of me respected the effects, of course, but most of me saw the movie as hollow, meaningless, and too lowbrow to be considered fine cinema. I cringed at the one-dimensional characters and hammy acting, the corny Area 51 stuff, all but Mr. Data, of course, and the jokey tone that would later go on to become synonymous with Marvel movies.
You really think you can fly that thing?
You really think you can do all that bullshit you just said?
Then I went to film school, where I met loads of other insufferable film snobs, including professors who would fail you the moment you mentioned anything produced by Hollywood after the mid-1970s. You probably think that's hyperbole, but it's not. That's when I figured out that these people are absolutely miserable. They had dedicated their lives to something that, when it becomes successful, they turn their noses at it. I didn't want to become that, so I started to think of movies a little differently. Started to find a balance between critically thinking about films and being able to appreciate them for what they are. I started to enjoy the entertainment as well as the art. I also met my future wife at that time, and one of her favorite movies is, you guessed it, Independence Day. For the record, her absolute favorite is The Fifth Element. What can I say? She has good taste, even though she married me. So, I started to reevaluate Independence Day. What I thought was shameless ripping off of movies like Star Wars, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Planet of the Apes, 2001, The Towering Inferno, and of course George Pal's The War of the Worlds, started to look more like loving homage. The characters I thought were one-dimensional cardboard cutouts started to look like carefully crafted archetypes, and the over-the-top action scenes and jokey tone started to feel like the filmmakers sharing their joy with the audience. Independence Day, at long last, had become fun. So here's where I'm going to lose some of you. I'm going to argue that Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin are actually great writers. Or at least they used to be. I'll admit I'm cribbing a lot from their own audio commentary, but look at how they introduce and juggle an enormous cast of characters. Most of the major players are brought in by scenes where you just see their day-to-day family life. They aren't immediately defined by their jobs or by the necessities of the plot. Instead, we see a guy who plays chess with his father and cares about saving the environment. We see a president who starts his day like a normal husband and father, etc. Then, as the plot unfolds, their reactions are dictated not by events, but by their characters. As Dean Devlin puts it, the greatest special effects in the world are meaningless if you don't care about the people in those special effects. Sure, some of the people in the movie don't have a lot in the way of depth, but Independence Day isn't supposed to be a down-and-dirty character study. It was made to be entertainment, not art, so it's not afraid to be corny or cliché. And that's what went completely over my head when I was a stupid teenager. Today, I look at Independence Day and see one of the best popcorn flicks ever made. In fact, I dare say, like my wife, I now count it as one of my favorite movies of all time. And yes, it is, without question, a sci-fi classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Happy 250th birthday to America, and happy Defeat the Aliens Day to the whole world. Before you go, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. And until next time, when we'll play volleyball with a giant lobster, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
This could be our last night on Earth. You don't want to die a virgin, do you?
Come on, we're going.